گفتگوی انجام دادم با Seth M نویسنده آمریکایی که درباره حکمرانی آب در اسرائیل تحقیقات مفصلی کرده. اسرائیل جایی هست که با وجود خشکی زیاد مدیریت آب در اونجا مثال زدنی هست و فناوری‌های آبیاری خودش رو به کشورهای مختلف عملاً صادر کرده و حتی کالیفرنیای آمریکا هم داره از اسرائیل میآموزه. اسرائیل یکی از کشورهای پیشرو در زمینه مدیریت منابع آب هست. وضع قوانین مختلف در دهه 50 و بعد از اون باعث شد که اسرائیلی‌ها بتونن بر اساس اون قوانین وضعیت آب رو خیلی دقیق‌تر مدیریت بکنند. با اینکه ساختار اسرائیل از نظر جغرافیایی با ایران کاملا متفاوت است، اما شباهت‌هایی هم باعث میشه که بخوایم توجه بکنیم که چه تجربیاتی از اسرائیلی‌ها را ما میتونیم به ایران منتقل بکنیم. Seth M نویسنده آمریکایی هست که در آمریکا حقوق خوانده، در اسرائیل روابط بین‌الملل و درباره مدیریت منابع آب تحقیقات وسیع انجام داده. از جمله 220 گفتگو انجام گرفته برای نوشتن کتابی که یکی از کتاب‌های پرفروش در زمینه منابع آب بوده و خیلی موفق محسوب میشه. برای من جالب بود که ببینم این نویسنده آمریکایی چرا توجه زیادی کرده به مدیریت منابع آب و مسئله آب چه اهمیتی داشته که رفته سراغ اون. آقای سیگل، خیلی ممنون که مهمان آبانگان هستید. برای من جالب بود که بدونم شما چطور شد به عنوان یک حقوقدان و کارآفرین توجهتون جلب شد به مسئله آب در اسرائیل.
Well, Nick, you had the good fortune of growing up in a family that thought about water from the time they woke up in the morning till the time they went to sleep at night. I came to it much later in life. And what happened was about 5 or 6 years ago, I attended, quite by chance, I attended a session where a senior U.S. government official was speaking about this coming global water crisis. I didn't know anything about it. It was new news to me. He shared all kinds of quite alarming information. And finishing the meeting, I went back to my office and I said to myself, I'm a concerned, involved citizen. I need to learn more. The idea that I was going to write a book was the farthest thing from my mind. And what I did, in fact, was just said, I just want to be smart about this. I want to be able to talk intelligently about this. I want to know more. I started learning more, and what I discovered was this great imbalance, this great gap between the crisis that was at hand and the number of people who actually were aware of the fact of what was coming. And so I decided that what I needed to do was to start educating others. I wrote some articles for major newspapers, I told people about it, I made a couple of speeches, and then it became clear to me that the only way I could reach a mass audience was by writing a book. So I wrote the book. I never assumed it would be the success that it was, but here we are.
یکی از مسائلی که خیلی از ایرانی‌ها خبر ندارند حضور کارشناسان آب اسرائیل در ایران پیش از انقلاب هست. مدت زمانی تقریباً در طول 2 دهه و تاثیرگذاری زیادی هم داشتن، به ویژه بعد از اتفاقاتی که در زلزله بوئین زهرا افتاد. شما چطور راجع به این مسئله آگاه شدید؟ و همونطور که در کتابتون هم آوردید، کارشناسان زیادی تونستن تاثیرگذاری زیادی داشته باشن در این ارتباط در ایران.
Well, in the course of doing my research, and it happened quite by accident, it's a very moving story. The man who actually was in charge of Israel's program in Iran was a professor, and I was interviewing him about something completely unrelated to Iran. I flew to Israel to interview him, and we were sitting in a little cafe near his apartment. He had told me before the interview that he had suffered a stroke a few months earlier, and he was just recovered. And I could see he was moving slowly and such, but his mind was still quite sharp. And I asked him about something involving the research he had been doing, and he said, well, I can't tell you because at that time I was in Iran. And I was sure at that very moment that he must have had some stroke residue problems. And I said, no, you don't mean Iran, you mean Israel. He said, no. He says, I mean Iran. I said, no, you couldn't mean Iran. He said, I'm telling you, my boy, I mean Iran. And his voice got very strong, and suddenly he wasn't an old man anymore. He became very young. And he proceeds to tell me at great length about his many, many years, almost 20 years, in Iran. And I was shocked beyond words. I got back to America, and I asked him if he could share with me the names of anyone else who was with him there. And he shared with me all the people. They're now very old men. He shared with me the names of a handful of them. I called them all. And the story was just extraordinary. A story of cooperation and partnership between Israel and Iran. A story, as you see in the book, where not a single bad episode between Iranians and Israelis, affection between the two communities. And this is really what I dreamed could be the case once again. So I thought this would be a good story to tell about water. It'd be a good story to tell about Iran's, if I may be so bold to say, failure of governance, and their failure of governance shown in many ways, but most particularly today in water, and how badly they need to get back to where they were before the Shah fell.
و البته این کارشناسان نتونستن با روحانیت ایران رابطه خوبی برقرار کنن، درسته؟
Yes. Well, what happened was, according to, I ended up interviewing quite a number of different people, including the then ambassador of Israel to Iran. It was a very low-key ambassadorship. They didn't want to be too loud about it. Iran was an Islamic country, a Shiite country, and they thought it would be important to be there, but not important to be there in a big, loud way. And what he said is that they had excellent relationships with the military, with the agriculture sector, with the business sector, but that what had happened was the Ayatollah Khomeini had been visited by Yasser Arafat when he was in exile, and Arafat persuaded him to do everything that Khomeini could do to sabotage the relationship between Israel and Iran. So Khomeini made a command from wherever he was. I thought it was France, but it could have been another location, that no one in the clergy should be having dealings with the Israelis. By the way, I would argue to the detriment of Iran to this very day. I mean, it's a shame that they have developed this, to me, crazy obsession with Israel, because to the benefit of the country, its people. Imagine that 1979 had not happened the way it had, and that Israel and Iran had continued being partners and friends. Just think of how beautiful the region would be, and just think about how Iran's water would be in such a good position now rather than where it is today.
شما به پیشکسوتان و آغاز کنندگان در حقیقت مدیریت منابع آب در اسرائیل اشاره کردید تو کتابتون. یکی از اونها سیمکا بلاس هست. که از اروپای شرقی اومد و تاثیر بسیاری گذاشت. میتونید درباره اثرگذاری آقای بلاس توضیح بدین؟
It's one of these great, remarkable stories. You know, where in a generation does Leonardo da Vinci come from? Where does Michelangelo come from? Where do these great transformational thinkers come from? Simcha Blas's story is a very moving one. He grew up in Poland. Both of his grandfathers were wealthy traders, one in timber, one in manufacturing. They both came from very religious, Jewishly religious background. And at that time in Poland, there were very strict anti-Semitic rules, anti-Jewish rules, that prohibited Jews from going to university. But Blas was something of a math and scientific prodigy. And he learned about the world of engineering while he was busy studying to be a rabbi like his grandfathers. His grandfathers were business people, but also rabbis. And he became captivated by the world of inventing and designing and repairing. And there was a brief window of time between the two world wars where the greatest technological institution of Poland, like the MIT or the Caltech of the United States, agreed to accept very, very few Jewish students. And he was so excellent that he was one of them. And it was a great crisis in his family, because the idea of him going to classes on Saturday during the Jewish Sabbath was very heartbreaking for them, but nonetheless, his father and his grandfathers understood his great potential, so they let him go. And then, while at the university, he began reading about Palestine and about the Zionist Revolution. This is the 1920s about. He becomes captivated by the idea of Jews being sovereign in a place. And upon graduation, he becomes an inventor. He moves to Palestine, and his plan is to be an inventor in the agricultural space. He invents first a wheat planting device to save on labor. It doesn't sell very well. And then he looks around and he realizes the problem that Palestine really has, the land of Israel really has, is that they have water scarcity problems. And if indeed there's a large number of Jewish people who come to the region, and at that time also there was a very small Arab population, but was flowing in from Syria, from what's now Jordan, from what's Egypt, were flowing in because the Zionists were bringing economic opportunity to the region. And children, they brought hospitals and clinics. Infant mortality was becoming better, so mothers wanted to be there so their children could get health care. Workers came because the Zionists were providing labor opportunities. They arrived there, so the population was growing quickly. Blas realizes that the Arab and Jewish population is going to be increasing. There's not going to be enough water unless they do something about it. In a matter of a couple of years, he trains himself to be a water engineer, but not just any water engineer, a water engineer that can see way over the horizon on what the needs are going to be. He begins inventing new ideas and new approaches to water. And it is really, look, he didn't do it by himself, but he was the great mind. Had there not been a Simcha Blas, I can't really believe there would be an Israel of today the way it is today. Now, he had partners. There were political partners. There were people in government. There were people in finance. So he didn't do everything by himself. There were other engineers who worked with him. But Blas was the great inspiration who set off the great thinking.
یک از مسائلی که در کتاب متوجه شدم این هست که خیلی از پروژه ها تکیه‌ای بر بودجه دولتی ندارن و در حقیقت بخش خصوصی و یا نهادهای خیریه و یا افراد خیر اومدن پول رو جمع کردن که این پروژه ها انجام بشن. خب چیزی که در خیلی از کشورهای دنیا ما این رو نمیبینیم. فرهنگ چنین کاری از کجا آمده؟
You know, Nick, I tell you something. I try to make the point repeatedly in the book that my book is kind of about water, but it's really not about water. It's about culture. It's about vision. It's about determination. It's about courage to take on insurmountable obstacles. And this all is of a piece. The Zionist Revolution is really a very inspiring story for many people. And the reason it's inspiring is because it took a dispersed and broken people, brought them together again in a fixed place, and gave them hope. But the Zionist Revolution was not just a revolution of politics or of geography, it was a revolution of thinking. And so what they tried to do for all the people coming in, they said, think about the world differently. Challenge science, challenge economics, challenge convention. And so they did all that. Now, one of the things they said they knew is, you can't defy the fact that you need money to buy goods to build out what you have to build out. But they were very clever and innovative in different ways of raising funds. Some came from the government, some came from private sources, some came from foreign governments, some was loans. And today, of course, in Israel, nothing comes from the government. Nothing, by law. Every single penny of the water system of Israel, which is abundant and extraordinary, comes from the citizenry itself or from very sophisticated financial vehicles like long-term revenue bonds.
شما وقتی درباره انقلاب صهیونیستی صحبت میکنید، انقلاب صهیونیستی اسرائیل، خب برای خیلی ها که در ایران تحت تأثیر تبلیغات حکومتی قرار گرفتن، پذیرش این که این انقلاب پدیده مثبتی بوده حداقل برای محدوده مردم اسرائیل امر غریبی هست و خیلی ها برای اینکه به همدیگر تهمت بزنن به همدیگر عنوان صهیونیست میدن و همدیگر رو حقوق بگیران از صهیونیسم بین‌الملل میخوانند. میشه درباره این انقلاب صهیونیستی توضیح بدید که چه تأثیری داشته و چگونه حتی باعث شده که مدیریت منابع آب اسرائیل نوین به نقطه کنونی خودش برسه؟
Okay, so it's a complex question, but let me try to approach it from a couple different angles. First of all, not all revolutions are alike. Some revolutions are very positive and have very great outcomes. The American Revolution led to a long period of prosperity, of opportunity, becomes a magnet for the whole world. That's why people from everywhere want to live in America. The Russian Revolution was a disaster for humanity. Some people may say the Iranian Revolution in '79 was a gift. Some people would say it destroyed a country. Some people would say of it that it impoverished a country. Some people would say that you killed off some of your best and brightest people. So not every revolution is the same. What the Zionist Revolution was about was an attempt for Jews who had been marginalized by history, by dispersion, by persecution, to re-enter history and to be an actor on the world stage. Now, Israel was always going to be a small country, couldn't be otherwise. How many Jews are there in the world? It's 7 billion people in the world today, and worldwide there are 14 million Jews. So it's a very tiny number. But the concept of Zionism was that by gathering Jews together, by giving them an opportunity to be self-rulers, rather than to be ruled by others, they could achieve some great things for themselves, but also, and always this was part of this, to also achieve things for the world at large. Baked into the very essence of the Zionist Revolution, from the first moment, from the first day, is a biblical command to go out and be a light onto the nations of the world and to provide opportunities for the countries of the world. Now, again, it's very political. I understand that there have been a lot of defamation of Jews and of Zionists in certain countries, and Iran certainly is one of them. But that doesn't mean that those who have studied the subject have any reason not only to not be apologetic, but to look to it and say, boy, this would be a great model for the world. If in 1979 Iran had made peace with Israel, had continued the relationship with Israel, I think Iran would be in a much better place today economically, socially, certainly from a point of view of water management. Now, what the Zionist Revolution did, because it was a revolution of science and a revolution of ideas, is it challenged everybody to forever take nothing as granted and assumed as having to be the same tomorrow as it is today. It's a revolution that says we must challenge every assumption. And that is why it's not surprising to me that it is Israel that was the inventor of drip irrigation. It's not surprising to me that Israel invents a seed industry out of almost nothing. But the Jews developed this great seed industry, and they developed drought-resistant seeds. Instead of accepting the fact that this is what a seed does, they say, why can't a seed be something different? This is before genetically modified seeds. This is in the 1940s and 1950s. Amazing transformation. It's not surprising that in 1952, Israel says, you know what? We have all the water we need right now, but looking over the horizon, 20, 30, 40 years, we're going to start running out. And in 1952, they begin thinking in depth about two transformational ideas. One is the idea of taking all the sewage in the country, treating it to an ultra-high pure level that you could drink it if you have to, but knowing that people won't want to be drinking that water. They spent 30 years and billions of dollars building out a parallel national water infrastructure system so that that treated water from the sewage could be used exclusively for agriculture. The other thing they decided to do in the early 1950s was to say, you know, there's a lot of seawater. The Mediterranean is right next to most of the country. If we could take water out of the ocean, out of the sea, and extract the salt, we could be left with very good pure water. So the challenge was how to do that at an economical price, and they spent decades thinking about it and planning for it and challenging themselves, and they developed actually several excellent systems. And this goes back to the Zionist idea. Each time there was an excellent system, instead of saying this is what we're going to do and we're going to stop right here, they took it, they went back to the experimental laboratory, and they said, let's imagine we have to get rid of this. What can we do that's better? And that's why today Israel has the world's largest, lowest cost per liter desalinated water in the world, and at very low carbon fuel cost. Small country, big achievements. So I think if you want to go with, a winner, you look at their achievements, you look at what they've done, and you can say, this is a good thing. Now, if I can just answer a question that you haven't asked. People frequently say that, yes, they did this, but they did this on the backs of the Palestinians. But I came to this research with no preconceived notions about this. In fact, I had heard that so many times that I assumed it was true, and I assumed I would just say so in the book. I interviewed 220 people for my book. You're a journalist, you understand what it is to interview 220 people. I interviewed many of them multiple times. I interviewed 180 Israelis, 20 Palestinians, and 20 government officials outside of Israel and heads of charitable and non-governmental organizations. Well, here's what I learned. I learned that actually, of all the Arabs in that region, the ones who have the best water profile actually are the Palestinians. And I learned something that shocked me. And I didn't learn it from Israeli sources. I learned it from a Palestinian Arab who I interviewed. That the majority of the water the Palestinians use in the West Bank comes from Israeli sources. That a significant amount of water in Gaza, even when the rockets are flying out of Gaza into Israel, pumped water goes in every day into Gaza. And I thought to myself, that's a remarkable story that nobody knows. And so I don't try to pretend that there aren't difficulties between the Palestinians and the Israelis. I wish they could be solved tomorrow. But here's what I do know for sure, is that the water relationship between the parties is pretty good and actually getting better all the time. And I hope that water can be used as a model for how the two parties can work together and solve problems together.